More than 10,000 people in New York have died from coronavirus. There have been nearly 200,000 cases in this state. But New York's governor sees promising signs. He says the worst is over for his state if people continue to socially distance. So joining us now is New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Good morning, Governor. Great to see you. How do you know the worst is over here?
Well, Allison, good to be with you. We've been watching the numbers literally every day. Number of new hospitalizations, intubations, ICU, number of deaths, unfortunately. And the big first question was, can we get control of this virus? Can we stop the spread, right? Because otherwise we would have really been in a difficult situation. When will those number of new cases stop? And we're seeing what, quote unquote, flattening of the curve, another new expression, but the increase has slowed and has stabilized. It's not great news, but it says we can control the spread. And you see that in the numbers over the past 5 or 6 days, that there's a flattening of the curve, a plateau, if you will.
That is really good news. So I know that you're talking to neighboring governors about what next, about how people could get back to some semblance of normal. But this morning, we have this model from the University of Washington that the experts have been using, that the peak doesn't hit in Connecticut, one of the neighboring states, for 12 more days. So how can you even have that conversation with Governor Lamont there?
Well, it's a good point. And look, anyone who tells you, Allison, I know what comes next, doesn't even understand the question, let alone have the answer. Nobody's been here before. This is totally uncharted territory. And you're right. You have different peaks of that curve in different areas. So we're not talking about the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We're talking about months. We're talking about a phased reopening and a safe reopening. We're talking about a reopening that has a public health plan and an economic plan totally coordinated. Our behavior has stopped the spread of the virus. God did not stop the spread of the virus. And what we do, how we act, will dictate how that virus spreads.
But Governor, what does months mean in New York? I mean, when you say we have months, meaning nobody's going back to work or going outside or restarting the economy here for months yet?
No, it means a phased reopening. It means there is no light switch. It's not binary. Not everybody, it's not going to be next Tuesday we all go back. Amen. You can leave your homes. It's going to be a phased process. We have to bring in testing so that we're testing as we're doing this reopening so that we can gauge whether or not we're increasing the virus spread. We have to start with really what's an expansion of essential services, right? Because it's not that the economy was closed down. You can get on a bus, you can get on a train, you can buy food, but expand that list of essential services. And that phase, that evolution of the economic reactivation is what we're talking about.
But I have heard you say before testing, and that testing is key. Widespread testing is key to being able to open effectively. But I've also heard you say that the state doesn't have the capacity for widespread testing. And for whatever reason, the federal government and the White House doesn't seem to have the appetite or, I don't know, capacity for widespread testing. So where does that leave you?
Yeah, in a conundrum, as we would say. But that is the tension. I understand the desire to get back to work quickly. I understand the desire to get out of the house. I have cabin fever. I see it on every level. My state is hemorrhaging economically. We have a $10 billion deficit. I want to get out of the house. Trust me. Everybody does. But if you move too quickly and not smartly, you will see the numbers go right back up again, and you'll have to do another lockdown. We're watching other countries, Allison, that are going through this. And they've shown that when you move too precipitously, you create an issue, and then you have to go right back to square one. And this is not about going back to square one. So we have to temper our desire and emotion with our intelligence. Start to reopen, watch how many infections are increasing, do testing so people know that this is being done smartly and you can watch the infection rate. And we have to develop that testing. Yes, that is a new challenge. We've never done it before. Nobody ever heard of it before. but we have to have that reality as we go forward.
And you think that in the next weeks or months, New York will have the capacity for that kind of widespread testing?
We have to be developing it along with this phased reentry. And the federal government has to be realistic about this. You can't just wish it and then it is so, right? We went through the first phase of this, if you will. Let's learn from it. We didn't know what was happening then either. We learned that we had to develop additional hospital capacity, and the Army Corps of Engineers built thousands of beds of hospital capacity, and we did things we never did before. That's going to continue. We have to do testing like we've never done it before. We have to do disinfecting of our public facilities like we've never done it before. You have to clean trains and buses in a way you've never done it before. How do we do these things? But it's not, I want to get out of my house, so let's all run outside. We know what will happen if we do that.
The governor of Connecticut said for his state, not before May 20th. Do you have any not before date for New York?
I don't have, look, the governor of Connecticut, Governor Ned Lamont, is a colleague of mine. He's very, very smart. And I tend to agree with everything he has said all through this situation. I haven't studied the dates. I don't know the dates. I know it's a process. I know we start, and then we see how it goes, Allison. Nobody can tell you this is what's going to happen in June, this is what's going to happen in July. Mm-hmm. We've just never been here before. And all the experts who did predict what was going to happen, it turned out they were wrong, including the White House and the CDC and all the great universities and the public health experts, because we changed the trajectory of the virus by our actions. And that's the real important lesson to me. Yeah. Nobody knows. They have projections, but it depends on what you do.
Yeah.
You tell me the behavior of New Yorkers today, I'll tell you the infection rate in 4 days. So it's totally in our control. And if we're smart, we do it once and we do it right.
President Trump, as you know, said yesterday at the White House press briefing that, quote, the president calls the shots. Governors can't do anything without the approval of the president of the United States. Your reaction?
We had this argument. It was done a long time ago. People by the name of Hamilton and Jefferson and Madison and Washington, and they concluded this. They wrote a document that's called the Constitution of the United States, and it is an explicit and intricate balance of power between the federal government and the state governments. And it says the federal government does not have absolute power. It says the exact opposite that the president said. It says that would be a king. We would have had King George Washington, and we didn't have King George Washington, and we don't have King Trump. We have President Trump. And remember, the colonies created the federal government. The states created the federal government, not the other way around. We have the 10th Amendment that is explicit. Certain responsibilities are state responsibilities. Health, welfare, quarantine, those are health responsibilities. Yeah. So the president should not even think of going there. That would be divisive and political, and it would be totally contrary to everything we've been trying to do by working in a cooperative fashion.
But practically speaking, if President Trump orders you to reopen New York on some date, what do you do? If he
ordered me to reopen in a way that would endanger the public health of the people of my state, I wouldn't do it. And we would have a constitutional challenge between the state and the federal government, and that would go into the courts, and that would be the worst possible thing he could do at this moment, would be to act dictatorial and to act in a partisan, divisive way. Keep the politics out of it. I know he's running for re-election. I know this is a political year. I know it's a hyper-partisan environment. I know it's red versus blue. Not anymore. Not when it comes to this. This is red, white, and blue. I have 10,000 deaths in my state. This virus didn't kill Democrats or Republicans. It killed Americans, and it killed New Yorkers. And I'm not going to go down a political road